Getting in shape. I can still lift 130 pounds up 2 flights of stairs. Okay, so you're here. You've probably got the big case fetish. Possibly you might be big case curious. It's cool. You're cool here. Cooler Master's got us covered. So normally you would just do this on the floor. This is designed like a television. There's some tabs here at the bottom. You don't even have to lift it or take it out of the box or anything. Hello. Now while this case supports mini ITX, micro ATX, and regular ATX, really you're buying this case for EATX, SSI CEB, or SSI EEB. It has 8 expansion slots, 2 200mm fans in the front, 340mm fans, or 620mm fans for the top if you remove the 480mm fan bracket. In terms of radiator support, this case is unparalleled. 2 360 or 1 420mm up top, a 420/360mm at the front, 240mm at the rear. Get a bottom bracket, you can do a 420 or a 360 down there, and a side mount that'll use 480, 420, 360, or you have to remove the tempered glass mirror. You can put your pump, res combo, whatever you want there. CPU cooler clearance is 166mm, power supply clearance is 200mm, and the graphics card clearance is 490mm. RTX ready! I mean, this is the most expensive version of the HAF that you can buy. I got half a mind to review this thing. Well, yes, I would say it's not half bad. Hello. What an impressive case. When you take the top off, there is a nice plastic accessory thing. Don't lose that. It's got these screws and everything in it. Now this is the HAF 700 EVO. Through a twist of fate, Cooler Master sent me this. They're actually launching a newer cost-down version of the HAF 700. It's the same basic frame, but without the bells and whistles. So if this really ticks all your boxes, but you feel like the EVO version's not for you with the front panel, tempered glass, and the LCD and that sort of thing, keep watching, because this is the same basic layout, and you can do the same basic, absolutely insane build with this, but without quite so much of the bling. Mesh top, plenty of mounts for fans and breathability. With the top off, that unlocks our heavy glass side panel. Most of the weight of this case comes from the glass. So much glass. It's absolutely bonkers. In terms of cooling with the case, you get 3 sickle flow 120 and 2 200mm sickle flow in the front. 5 fans total. Our other side panel, as you can see, it's very breathable. Breathability for the power supply, and breathability with a dust filter for the side intake. This is the removable, relocatable radiator cage. So this is pretty cool because you can put this in some different random places in the case, including an angled mount, should you so desire. I don't know if you can kind of see what I did there, but sort of toollessly, this radiator cage locks in place. So it's also got some drive bays, so you can mount a pump or drives or whatever to this metal plate. That's the thing. Put this in the front. And then you can get that cage locked in the front So even though you're using 200mm fans, you can still mount, a radiator in this and still get airflow through it, but with the 200mm fans mounted in the front. It's pretty genius. You could mount this in the bottom or the top or different locations, depending on what you're going for your build. At the rear, there's tons of room for drives. Behind this plate, in this area, there's room for 4 3.5-inch drives here alone. Not to mention all the other places you can hide them around this build. Look at the absolutely bonkers front of this case. You've got real tempered glass. That's not plastic on the front. Again, big part of the weight of this case. Then we've got our power and reset button, headphone, and microphone. Then on the other side, we have 4 USB 3 ports plus a USB Type-C. This case is set up for pretty much any motherboard you want to run with whatever level of front panel connectivity you could possibly want. Now, also in the box, the master accessory, the Universal Vertical Graphics Card Holder Kit. So this is really cool because you can mount your GPU vertically and show it off through the tempered glass. As I've probably given away in the build, however, we're going to be putting 2 RTX 6000 GPUs in this, so yeah, we're not going to be able to use the vertical bracket, but that's okay. Oh, I'm trying to remember Bilbo's speech. What is it? It's like, I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve, and half... I don't know if I can do that one. Toollessness is the name of the game. Toollessness, at least until it comes time to actually mount something, and then you're gonna need some tools. Now right there you can mount, another radiator, another set of fans, or this cool mirror thing that comes with the case. Designed by Cooler Master. Ah! Let's peel out of here. Pretty cool here. That's the mirror over there. This is your 3.5-inch drive cage for quick removal. Makes maintenance really easy. You get to the motherboard, no problem. So much room for hard drives and pumps and fans and accessories and Threadripper Pro CPUs and just about anything you can possibly want to put in here. It's high airflow. That's in the name. It's designed for that. You have to bleep this one, but there's definitely nothing half-assed about this case. Bottom dust filter. Good Lord, what a case. Now, even before I add components to this case, it's basically already impossibly heavy. But that's fabulous. That's the sign of a quality product, right? It weighs more than the sun. For your big case fetish, what's the half-life? It has a cool quick release expansion slot thing where you just flip it out and flip it back. One thing maybe slightly surprising about this build is that there's not really an area that you could convert for dual power supplies. Oh, don't get me wrong, it's got plenty of room for a giant power supply. A 2,000 watt power supply would be no problem, the extra long variety. But some of these really high-end cases make provisions for dual power supplies, or maybe those are on the way out. But I was kind of surprised there doesn't seem to be a way to mount dual power supplies. I've considered using dual power supplies like standard ATX power supplies. They don't provide any redundancy, but for more wattage for a large number of GPUs in a Threadripper Pro build. But for this case, we'll just go with an absolutely insane Cooler Master power supply. Is it kind of surprising you can't fit 2 systems in here? I mean, sometimes when you got a case this big, they can't help but stick, an ITX board area somewhere. But that would be 2 half measures. As I alluded to, Threadripper Pro, I've settled on the Asus WRX80 motherboard. This is an extremely overbuilt and well-engineered motherboard. It doesn't support overclocking or anything like that, even though it's got this ridiculous overbuilt VRM, which is sort of surprising. But it still has all the onboard amenities, including onboard VGA, that you have to use this little breakout cable for that's off the bottom of the motherboard. But you know, you can do remote management and all the server style stuff, even though this is sort of a quasi workstation. This motherboard also has 8 onboard SATA connections, so if I wanted to use this as sort of a quasi server and have a bunch of not exactly hot swap but easily swappable 3.5-inch drives, well, our Cooler Master a HAF 700 case delivers that in droves, and it will pair nicely with this motherboard with all the features. Don't hassle the HAF. Glass half full, glass half empty. I'm not personally into big cases, but given half a chance. If you're doing this build, you will have to relocate some of the motherboard mounts and use a couple of the extras in the Cooler Master accessory kit, so don't be bashful, don't be afraid to do that. Well, this video has already run too long. We're at time and a half. That's overtime. This video has already run overtime. You mean it's time and a half? Now, my long-term plan for this build is probably to do a pretty custom loop for the CPU, the GPUs, that involves getting blocks together. I can't do all that in this video. I'm gonna have to spread that out over several different videos and find the appropriate cooling kit and the blocks and get some RTX 6000s that need cooling. Today, we're just gonna get this put together and up and running. It's not unusual to need, you know, a 1600 watt power supply. I mean, we've got 7 expansion slots here. If we're gonna put in 2, 3, 4 RTX 6000, you want at least 1000 watts, 1200, 1600 watts. You can ballpark about 300 watts per GPU, plus about 300, 350 watts for the platform itself. So 3 GPUs plus the platform, it's about 1200 watts, give or take. But that kind of thing is what this case excels at. HAF, high airflow. This is a very high-end case. And in the grand scheme of things, when you're talking about the pricing for Threadripper Pro, the motherboard and the GPUs, the case price is basically a rounding error. And if I do opt for that custom loop later, well, that's going to be a lot more expensive than the case too. But I need an appropriate chariot to carry all those radiators. I mean, look, I can rock dual 360 radiators in the top. How bananas is that? Another thing to consider if you're doing a build like this, the bottom of this Asus motherboard has 2 PCIe 6-pin power connectors. Why are those there? Well, it turns out the GPUs can use up to 75 watts through the PCIe slot. Even though this motherboard has 2 8-pin connectors plus the 24-pin connector for regular ATX power, you really do need to connect those 6-pin connectors on the bottom edge of the motherboard if you're going to be rocking a lot of GPUs. What's a lot? More than 2. So if you're doing a build like this and you're encountering stability issues, double check that you remembered to plug in those 2 6-pin PCIe power connectors. There's several posts on the Level 1 forum where it was, I'm having stability issues, and it's like, what are you doing? It's like, well, I'm running 4 or 5 GPUs. Did you plug those in? No. Oh, I plugged them in and now everything's good. Lesson learned. Well, the motherboard's mounted, but we've got so much more to do. Half-Life 3 confirmed. For cooling, at least temporarily, we're going to be using the Arctic SP3TR4. It's a 4U. It's designed for a rack mount case, but it's going to work great. I got a bunch of these scattered around for lab testing and everything else, so I'll be able to use this temporarily and then swap to something else. But for a rack server or something like that, this is pretty good. Probably should also install my RAM. Now, again, as you think about a build, you really want to run at least, you really want to run all 8 sticks of memory because that gives you the most memory capacity. And if you're building Threadripper Pro, you know, you can afford it. You can run 4 or 6 channels and get reasonable performance, but it's a pretty significant performance fall off. You can check out the benchmarks to know if it's going to matter for your particular application. I just go for 8, you know. I'd probably go for a minimum capacity of 256 gigs, but personally, I think 512 gigs is the sweet spot. At least if you're rocking a 32 or a 64 core CPU. Now, if you're using the 16 core CPU because you just need lots of PCIe lanes or something like that, okay, maybe 128 or 256 gigs makes sense for your application.
Definitely nothing too clever in this case by HAF.
Now, Cooler Master makes some fine power supplies as well. You can bleep that if you want. This is the XG Plus 850 Platinum. I just told you 850 watts is not enough for what I want to do. I'm just trying to get some stuff together for testing, okay? We're just gonna test it. I'm gonna put 2 GPUs in here, and I'm not gonna run the CPU at the same time that I'm running the GPUs. We're just doing some comparisons here. So, this will be enough. 80 plus platinum, 10-year warranty. What's not to love? Oh, look how well packed that is. Look at that. I mean, look how ridiculous the HAF 700 is. We have captured thumb screws for the power supply. Captured thumb screws for the power supply. How bananas is that? All right, the power supply is screwed in place. It looks almost Lilliputian in this case. It looks like an SFX power supply in a regular case. Giant power cord. Pro tip, if you're not gonna put the bag of cables in the case, put the papers that came with the power supply in the bag, so when you open the bag, it's like, oh, this is the thing that goes with that. And we're almost there, but there's one critical piece that's still missing. Well, 2 actually. Now these, thanks to an anonymous benefactor in the level 1 community. I love the level 1 community, thank you for being awesome. I have 2 RTX 6000 cards. Ooh, and they're unpeeled. Oh, the RTX A6000. And it's twin. This case is so expensive, I've got a taste of how the other half lives. But don't worry, there's a lower cost version. I hope these all get some time, jeez. It's so appealing. There's an optional cable hider at the bottom. It won't work if you're going to install a GPU off the bottom of your motherboard, which for a Threadripper Pro motherboard, it's actually a pretty smart thing to do because it doesn't block an expansion slot. Now these RTX A6000 cards, they actually use CPU style power, which is 4 plus 12 volt lines and 4 ground lines. Your GPU power lines, your regular PCIe lines only have 3 12 volt lines, so this actually is quite a bit more wattage. So we adapt the PCI Express power into the CPU style power. EPS 12 volts is what that's called. EPS 12 volts for the GPU win. This is really shaping up to be a pretty rocking system. Pro tip, if you're not getting any post output, you can use a keyboard and toggle caps lock on and off to see if caps lock goes on and off on the keyboard, because if it does, there's something there. Just gotta give it some time. Well, at this point we've got a functional system. I'm gonna go ahead and set it up for machine learning, but the build is basically done, at least done for now. Longer term, like I say, I have plans to double the wattage here, maybe add some more GPUs, and a custom loop will really let me pack in the GPUs. So, yeah, if you have some ideas for machine learning stuff or some quick, easy videos to put together, hey, love to have some help. Hit me up in the forum. Maybe we can work something out. Anybody got any computational fluid dynamics simulations that I can run cross-platform? Because that's what I want to do. Woo! All right, I'm signing out, and you can find me in the Level 1 forums. Oh, and big thanks to Cooler Master for sending the 850 watt power supply, which I will use the heck out of, as well as our HAF 700 EVO. Be sure to check this out if you want to build something like this. You can see that it's extreme maximum overkill. Hopefully this is going to get a little bit more time in the channel, especially when I get the custom loop parts and everything else in. But also, there's a lower cost version of this case. If you like the chassis, but you don't need the LCD panel at the front with the fancy stuff, because of course we're all going to load memes on it, right? Or maybe not quite so much of the RGB or the tempered glass. Well, Cooler Master does have an option. Alright, I'm one of those Level 1. I'm signing out. You can find me in the Level 1 forums. If you want more info on the HAF 700 EVO, or even other versions of the HAF 700, same basic frame like I say, there's a link below. Click that. Check that out. If I'm too late and you already have one of these, show me pictures on the forum. I want to see pictures. The EVO 700 HAF, definitely bigger than a halfling.